Well, first, I'm going to share with you what my original intention was for this. And then I will come back and share with you what actually happened next and what actually took place on the playground of desire. And I have quite a bit that I want to share and quite a bit that I want to explore. So here's the desire that's arising for me is to create an event, and I have no clue if it's going to be one day, 5 weekends, 2 weekends. I have no freaking idea. Okay. This is how I flow now. All I can tell you is that we'll have a live event, and then from what arises in that live event, we'll decide if we need to have another one or not. I have no limit for how many sessions we're going to do. I'll feel it out. We'll have Q&A with non-physical on whatever is arising for you, whatever your desires are, and whatever's arising for you around the desire, whether it be, I just can't figure out how to release attachment to something that means so much to me. Or I don't know how to do this middle ground. I'm like over here pounding down the doors of manifestation, or, I've always been over here, but I'm curious to see what that middle ground looks like. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter. I say, take what resonates and discard what does not, no matter what, So some of what I'll share may resonate. Some of what I'll share, you'll go, that doesn't resonate. Totally cool. That's how we're supposed to flow while we're here. Take what resonates, discard what does not. So I know that I will be doing this little playground first, and then I'll be doing the monthly events thereafter. All right, so 2 days before hosting the Playground of Desire, my divine team invited me to throw everything out that I had originally planned on teaching. So I actually showed up with no hard agenda for what we were going to be doing together. I will say that this is not an experience of how do I manifest my desires? What's the 6 steps? What's the 2-3 tricks or tips or process that I use, That's not where I am in my own experience today, so I can't offer that. This is much more of an experience of how do I match the frequency of my desire such that the living of my desires becomes a natural and effortless experience that doesn't require a tremendous amount of focus, doesn't require a tremendous amount of effort, doesn't require anything really. It's just that this entire experience was much more focused on the higher frequency, more expanded awareness of the truth of who we are. And the fact that desires arise quite naturally, they're not sins, they're not, nor are they things to apply a lot of effort in order to experience. So this is more of experiencing your desires as a natural arising and allowing them as a natural, experiencing the allowing of our desires as a very natural and effortless experience. I think that's how I would describe, if I were to describe this entire experience, that's probably a brief summary of how I would describe it. I honestly had no clue that this would become what it became. I honestly had no clue how the interaction in the group would be, but it was absolutely beautiful. And I had no idea when I was invited to throw my agenda out that 50% or more of what we would be doing together is simply conversations with my divine team. Each of the sessions were probably 2 hours. I think there was one session that was a little less than 2 hours and one session that was probably about 3 hours. And I'll just highlight some of the things that ended up unfolding because every single week, this happened every single week on a Saturday at 6 o'clock, I believe. And every single week on a Saturday at about somewhere between 10 a.m. and noon, I would just sit with my divine team and I would say, what are we going to talk about today? And really just flowed with whatever I was given. So really each week was whatever it wanted to be in that moment. I truly have never completely surrendered to spirit and to my inner guidance and to my intuition in that way before. Certainly not for 12 to 14 to 15 hours of conversation with others and with my divine team. It definitely was not my intention. And certainly to have most of what we experienced together, probably 50 to 60% of what we experienced together was Q&A with my divine team on the topic of desire and all kinds of peripheral topics around how we experience desire as human beings. Now, I had put some highlights out on YouTube, and I can't remember the exact title of each of the videos that I had put out on YouTube, but I had put out a couple videos, I believe, from the playground of desire as we were going through it. So some of you have gotten some of the highlights. I think there was highlights from session 1 on YouTube and highlights from session 2 on YouTube as well. So I won't go into those because you've already received the highlights on those. I'll put them in the location where I'm putting the videos, which is AlisonPhillips.tv/desire. But I will highlight a couple of things that felt very powerful in our time together. I can't remember which session number this was, but we were talking about, of course we talked about, my divine team gave me a statement on what desire is, and we were talking about what is it really, and how do we release attachment from desire when the thing that we desire feels so important to our very existence or important to our well-being. How do we release attachment? And there was some very unexpected guidance from my divine team on even that. I mean, I thought I had the answer before I put together the event, but a whole new thing came out because I was in complete surrender throughout the whole thing. I wasn't attached to anything that I had written down before or any agenda that I had before. I could really, truly, completely surrender to whatever my team wanted me to share and wanted to flow through me, which actually made it incredibly easy because I didn't have to pre-think anything. I just woke up on the day of the event. Sometimes I'll get nudges from like the night before the event, but it was usually on the day of the event that I would wake up and go, what are we going to talk about today? And sometimes if we didn't get finished talking about the thing that I was given or was inspired to share, we would know that we'll talk about it next week. But even in those moments, sometimes the next week would come along and something else would arise. And I really just surrendered to that. And I'm really so, so, so grateful for everyone in that experience. Nobody said, well, I thought you were going to talk about this and where's this going to happen? It's like it was the perfect group of people to have this first experience, which was the first experience for me of complete surrender to whatever was going to unfold under the topic of desire. And everyone flowed right along with that, and I didn't have to worry about whether somebody's going to be disappointed if I didn't say this because I said I was going to say it last week. And everyone just kind of fell into the flow, the beautiful flow of the unfolding of this playground of desire. One of the sessions that I was most excited to deliver was the one where I was sharing 3 quickie pathways to come into alignment with the frequency of your desire. And that was important for me to share because I come from a place with the law of attraction, with lots of practices, lots of processes, lots of blah, 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 right? And I moved into this gentle flow of simply allowing, right? And allowing can look very different for different people. So there's no like rule for allowing. Just abandon that. There's no one way to be. There's no one way to do anything, right? What was most exciting for me was I knew that when I was going to share this, that I was not only going to describe how I fell into or was called into these 3 quickie pathways, I was also going to have everyone there experience it. And I wanted them to experience it as a quickie pathway. So we didn't spend a lot of time on it. But the experience that each person had for literally 30 seconds, or I think there was one that we did for a minute and the other one that we did for literally 30 seconds. And the feedback there was consistent with what I personally experienced with these 3 pathways, is that it instantaneously shifts your vibration. Instantaneously, which is why I call them 3 quickie pathways. I also had a conversation with my divine team before sharing this, because I know and I knew that what I was going to share, if people heard it, there's some number of people who would call it a spiritual bypass. Like, you're bypassing all your shit, like you're trying to get to where blah, blah, blah. Because human beings have a belief in hard work to get to what they want, right? So I knew that either somebody in the group or somebody coming along afterward would probably have the question of, isn't this like bypassing your crap? It's so fast, and it does indeed have such a profound effect so quickly. Would you be bypassing the lessons you're supposed to learn here, right? And going to the thing that you desire more quickly than maybe your soul intended or whatever, right? So instead of trying to come up with the answer for that myself, because I didn't come up with any of the content on my own completely anyway, I just decided, let me just ask my divine team for the answer on this. And I believe there's probably 20 minutes of audio. I can't remember. I think there were 2 different audios on it, some of which was actually quite funny. So that answer is in there as well. But that particular session on the 3 quickie pathways that was my highlight, because I knew that the minute I shared this and allowed people to experience it, they would see how effortless it could be to match the frequency of your desire. So that was a highlight for me, because I was excited to share this because I have been experiencing it for so long. The other highlight was more for what I knew other people have a pretty strong interest in, and that's financial desires, right? In whatever way you want to experience your financial desires. My original intention, this is how, when you surrender, anything can happen. My original intention was to share this 30-minute audio conversation with my divine team, where someone had asked me, how do I want to feel financial security? How do we get to the place of financial security? And so I sat with my divine team and just said, here's the question. How do we get to the place of financial security? And what ended up happening, because the topic of money was the very last thing we talked about. I know a lot of people want it to be the very first thing we talk about. It was actually the very last thing we talked about. And I had this 30-minute audio to share. And I asked for the people in the group to just send me whatever questions you have before we end on money or any other topic that you had. And not very many people had questions, but the people that did, I think there was only 3 people that actually sent me questions. But the list was so perfect that it allowed me to connect with my divine team for, I think, 2 to 3 hours. It is at least 2.5 hours of Q&A on the topic of money. Now, let me just say this right now on the topic of money. Humans are real tripped up when it comes to money. The minute they hear something about money, they think, oh, this is it. Allison sat with her divine team and had Q&A. Oh my God, this must be it. I'll find my answer here, right? You can find your answer anywhere. You can find your answer completely without this by simply sitting still and allowing the answers to come to you. Some people aren't there yet. That's totally fine. That's totally cool. But my point here is there is no magic bullet. There is no one way to your path to financial abundance or financial security or whatever it is you want to label it, okay? Go to my page here on my website, AlisonPhillips.tv/connect. In the top of that, at the current time, because I shift things around all the time, at the current time, there is a segment of that page. This is where people book sessions with me, but there's a segment on that page where I pointed you to an article that I wrote called 12 Myths and Realities I Have Personally Lived with Regard to Money. Read that. Because whenever you say I received guidance on money, people think like it's the Holy Grail, right? There's no Holy Grail here. We all have the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is your own vibration, okay? There's no other place to look. Although I offer this by way of assistance. This is not a Holy Grail. There's not a magic bullet here for money, okay? Anyone that has experienced this will tell you that what came through in all of the, I think it was 13 questions total, for about 2.5 hours of conversations where I just literally sat with my divine team and just asked those questions, that questions I had, questions other people have asked me, and just compiled it all into what I call the money playlist of conversations with my divine team. Powerful conversations, for sure, powerful conversations. But I will say this, it is not a list of tips and tricks. If you're coming here for another law of attraction practice to, forget it. You're not going to find it there. Anyone that listens to that will let you know that it puts you in a much more expanded awareness around money or any desire, such that you begin to see your own ability to allow much more effortlessly. If I were to define it, I would define it as that. I don't think there's a single, other than the 3 quickie pathways that I mentioned, which were really not like practices, it was like in the moment things, because it happens moment to moment. Your vibration happens moment to moment, which is why I introduced those 3 quickie pathways. But other than that, you won't find like a bunch of practices and processes in any of the 14 to 15 hours that we hung out together. It was just this building of expanded awareness, this building of remembering who we truly are, such that whatever arises as our desire feels playful, effortless, and the allowing becomes our natural way of being, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of how the experience unfolded. It was completely, totally an unplanned unfolding. It was literally left to Allison sitting with Spirit just before the event and allowing whatever wants to come through to come through. My intention with this is simply to share what has truly allowed me to be in a chill, easygoing, playful, effortless place in my own life with regard to my desires, in the hopes that it would bring ease and effortlessness, more joy, more fun back into the experience of desire as human beings. So all of the videos associated with this is at AlisonPhillips.tv/desire. I'll put all the previews there that I had published on YouTube in case you're looking for it and trying to see where it was. That's pretty much all I wanted to share on this. And I feel incredibly honored to put this out into the world. And with that, I'm moving on to my next creation, whatever that is. And whoever wants to experience this will. And whoever it doesn't resonate for won't. And that's totally fine with me as well. If it resonates for you, everything is at AlisonPhillips.tv/desire. And I'm off to my next adventure. Bye.